announcements while our speaker gets set up and ready to start today. Two things I want to make you aware of. One, we are launching our volunteer driving program. I've been talking a lot about this. This is a program where we have volunteers who are offering to give rides to our seniors who do not have transportation. They use their own car and their own gas, and they go through a background check, and they go through an orientation, and then they are registered with us as one of our volunteer drivers. We have online software that we use to match the drivers with the riders. So if you are someone who doesn't have transportation and you need a ride to the doctor's office, the pharmacy, to get groceries, maybe you want to come to Al-Hijrah for a program, you can register as a rider in the program. And then, whenever you have an appointment or you need a trip, you just give us 1 week's notice. You can call or email, and we will match you with a driver that will pick you up, okay? So it's not a taxi service. It's not an Uber service. It isn't something where you can call the driver and say, hey, come pick me up. You have to call us and let us know some information about your trip, and then we will match you with the driver, and a volunteer will call you to coordinate the details, and they'll pick you up and take you on your trip. So Kayla from the Social Services Office, I know a lot of you know her, is here today. She's at a table in the back, and she's here to help you if you have any questions. She can tell you more about the program, and if you'd like to enroll today, she can give you the application, a list of frequently asked questions that might be helpful, and she can help you to actually enroll and get you started in that program. So please take a minute at some point today to stop back and see Kayla, and she'll get you going as one of our riders, okay? Also, I just want to remind you that on November 8th, this is in, I don't know, two or 3 weeks, we are repeating our Medicare 101. Medicare 101. So the topic that day for this session, Friends Over 50, Medicare information, what the benefits are, who is eligible, how to enroll, okay? This was a very popular session in the spring, so much so that we brought it back for the fall. The time is different. That presentation is a full hour and a half. So instead of starting at 10:30, we will start at 10 o'clock that day. November 8th at 10 a.m. We'll still have breakfast, and then the presentation, Medicare 101. For that presentation, you have to sign up. I have a sign-in sheet here. We started this around last week, so your name may already be on here. So please look at the sheet, see if you are already signed up. If you're not, please just sign your first and last name and zip code. They need those zip codes to know which agents from which areas they should send. There's no cost for this. You're only giving the registration information so they know who to send. Okay, so I'm going to send these around, and I'll give you a pen in a minute to help you fill that out. And those are my only announcements for this morning. Any questions, anyone? Anything at all? Okay, if you haven't had something to eat, please help yourself. And remember at the end, if you can please just help us, if you're able, if you are able, if you can just help us fold your chair and take it to the back, that's a great help for Brother Idrisi, who has to get the room ready before prayer starts. Our speaker today is Matt Marquis. Thank you. Matt is from the Fairfax County Office of Emergency Preparedness. Emergency Preparedness. And his talk today is focused on emergency preparedness for seniors. So how can you be safe if there's an event like a terrible storm, damage to your home, loss of power? He'll talk about how you can prepare for that and how you can be safe for that. We've had so much in the news lately about the increasing severity of some of these storms, hurricanes and thunderstorms and tornadoes, and so Matt's going to talk about how to keep you safe if anything like that happens, okay? Remember also, since we're talking about that and we're getting into the time when the weather is becoming more severe, remember that we will follow the schedule for Fairfax County Public Schools. So if for any reason Fairfax County Public Schools are closed because of weather, we will not have this program. So if the weather is bad, if we have a storm, please just look to see if Fairfax schools are closed, and if they are, there's no program. Don't come to Al-Hijrah that day. We'll try to get it out on social media as quickly as possible as well, but for sure, take a look at Fairfax County Public Schools. Okay? All right, thank you everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Matt and enjoy today's discussion.
Hey, good morning everyone. How y'all doing? Doing well? Awesome. As stated, my name is Matthew Marquis. I work over at Fairfax County Office of Emergency Management. We're good? Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do today, I know she prefaced it a little bit. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about, one, emergency preparedness, but more importantly, how to build resilience within Fairfax County and the Northern Virginia region, the National Capital Region, to include parts of Southern Maryland and most of Northern Virginia, okay? So obviously this is titled Preparing for the Unexpected. There's my information. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask throughout. But if something comes to mind later on, there's my information right there, okay? So getting started, here's what we're gonna do, okay? So I'm gonna tell you, one, what we do, but I'm also going to use why this stuff matters and kind of talk about what the differences are between, blue sky days, so like what we have today where nothing's really going on, versus what happens during emergency operations, what the county kind of does, what you all can do to help protect yourselves, your family, your house, so on and so forth, okay? So, yes ma'am. Good? Okay, cool. All right, so who we are and what we do. All right, so like I said, I work with the Fairfax County Office of Emergency Management. We're one of the only agencies in Fairfax County that works with all of the other Fairfax County agencies. So human services, so like the health department, family services, offices for children, public safety, police department, fire department, health department, and then our infrastructure stuff. So our public works, our stormwater, all the things that you kind of see throughout, we work with them. We coordinate, collaborate, and communicate with all of them. So during an emergency operation, we have the ability to bring in people from all these different agencies to help respond and recover quicker from these different incidents. And we are definitely not prone to not having things happen. But if you look at the picture, I know it's a little bit hard to see up there. We house the Emergency Operations Center for Fairfax County. It's got about 100 seats in it. We have about 6 conference rooms that are attached to it. It's an immaculate facility, and it's one of the bigger facilities that is on the East Coast. And as far as localities are concerned, it's one of the biggest in the entire country. So very blessed in that sort of way. We do have 4 or 5 divisions that make up our office. Our planners are the ones who are basically writing the stuff. So our emergency operations plan, our hazard mitigation, our threat hazards, identification and risk assessment plan, and our newest one, which is going to be for the community, is the Community Emergency Response Guide. So the Community Emergency Response Guide is going to basically take all the things I'm telling you today and expand upon them gigantically. I mean, the document itself is about 120 pages long. It talks about what to do in different hazards, talks about how to prepare, how to respond, how to recover, and how to mitigate from different disasters and emergencies, because an emergency for me could be my house, catching fire. A disaster for the county could be widespread flooding, tornado, so on and so forth, right? Training and exercise. So like I said, we work with all of our external and internal partners to get them trained up on what to do, to how to respond and recover quickly from different emergencies or disasters. We also do training to get people prepared so that we're operating all within the same construct called National Incident Management System and the Incident Command Structure. This kind of came to after 9/11 because there are a lot of different people coming in. No one knew how to talk to one another, and there are a lot of duplicated efforts going on throughout the entire country. Outreach, what I do. Come out here, I talk to everyone, I try to get people as best prepared as I can by teaching them some stuff about what they can do by themselves to become more prepared, to the overarching resilience of the entire county. Public engagement is my big thing. I work at tables, at events. I come and do these a lot more personable presentations, all in an effort to try and get people a little bit more prepared and start to think about this kind of stuff. To be honest, emergency preparedness for the most part nationally falls way by the wayside. People don't think about it because it can't happen to them, right? Until it does. So it's better to think about it now than have something happen and then you're just not ready for it. And finally, everything's got money, especially disasters. Talking about the severity of disasters, I'm sure everyone here knows what Hurricane Michael did down in Florida. That's already estimated to be twice as costly as Hurricane Harvey, which was in the upwards of about $3 billion. So they're not even in the recovery phase yet, and they're already looking at $6 to $10 billion worth of recovery issues. So to put it kind of in perspective, we kind of look at all that money and see how we can get reimbursed from the federal government, from the state government, and from Fairfax County, okay? So that's what our grants and finance people do. So like I said, the EOC, Emergency Operations Center, we coordinate with our local people, our external partners, our state partners, our federal partners. Everyone comes there. We've had the FBI there, we've had the CIA there, we've had the National Guard, we've had the governor there, we've had all the politicians, blah, 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 blah. You kind of get it, right? So we have various levels. We can activate it at a monitoring level where it would be like 5 total people. Someone from police department, someone from the fire department, a 911 dispatcher, and a couple people from emergency management. The monitoring phases are kind of small events. The most recent one, for those of you who remember back in August, the Unite the Right protest that was supposedly going to happen in DC. A bunch of neo-Nazis essentially were going to get on a train, go to DC and protest. We deemed that a bad thing because we don't want a repeat of what happened in Charlottesville the year beforehand. So had a couple people in there, nothing ended up happening, and the guy who promoted the thing failed completely. So that was a good thing. Our next level is a partial. That's your snowstorm stuff. So we know that snow in this area, even an inch. I don't know if anyone here is from like up north, like Boston and all that stuff, but an inch of snow they kind of guffaw at and kind of go from there. An inch of snow here is paralyzing. So we activate it, we bring some infrastructure people in, public safety people if we need to, we'll do human services as well. But 10, 15 people. The last one is the full activation. And for those of you who have been here for a while, I'm sure you all remember the derecho back in 2012. Really bad thunderstorm that came through, knocked out power for about 10 days in the county, including the 911 system. So people were having to walk to a fire station or a police station to report an emergency. That's a big deal. So our human services were affected, our infrastructure was affected, and public safety was affected. So we had close to 100 people in that facility at once for about 10 days straight, 24 hours a day. All right, so does anyone here know what hazards can affect Fairfax County or Arlington County or Alexandria? Any ideas?
Listed a lot of them. Power, flood.
Flood, power failure, okay. Any others?
Storm, rainstorm. Gusty
Wind, that's a big one. Thunderstorms.
highway accident.
Traffic. Everyone loves traffic, right? All these are potential hazards that can affect our day-to-day lives, right? So up here, these are all actual pictures of things that have occurred in Fairfax County. So on your left is a warehouse fire. So that's an emergency, right? If you live in that area, fire and rescue is going to have you leave the area because unfortunately, you're at risk, and the propensity for some people to kind of get in the way of what they're doing complicates things. So that's a hazard. Flooding. Does anyone here live in Alexandria? No, I do. So,
Anywhere along the stream.
yeah, anywhere along the stream. But Huntington in particular has flooded at least 3 times. And we're talking about minimum 3 feet of water. So 3 feet of water doesn't seem like a lot, but if it gets into your house, it can be deemed like a total loss. That's Tropical Storm Lee right there, which led to some severe flooding. Again, on the bottom left, that's Tropical Storm Lee. So on Route 50 in Fairfax, there's about 3 feet of running water and flash flooding. So that picture right there is actually a firefighter rescuing someone from their car. Hazmat incidents, and then snowstorms. Who doesn't love snowstorms, right? So, I know it's kind of cut off right there, but we have 17 identified hazards in the county, ranging from tornadoes to terrorism, all right? So, considering we are such a high-profiled area, and it's happened in the past, we take all this stuff into consideration when we're building our threat hazard index. So our top 3 hazards are thunderstorms, winter storms, and flooding, all right?
Is that in frequency or severity?
Both. Probably get more flooding than you will chemical, biological, or radiological attacks. So those 3 are our top 3 hazards that we have to identify, mitigate from, and recover from the most, historically speaking. But if you look up here, I mean, we have a lot of different hazards. The main takeaway from this is if you prepare for one, you essentially are preparing for all of them. So we take this approach, and it's called the all hazards approach, where we have one plan. That one plan addresses how to respond and recover from flooding, but it can also be retooled to respond from a hazardous materials incident. That's the same thing that you guys should be doing. If you guys can't get to prayer, if you guys can't get to the grocery store, do you have contingency plans built in? How do you operate if your basic social services are not available? These are the kind of questions that we start to ask people, and I'm sorry ahead of time if I kind of put you in the dumps and depress you a little bit. That's kind of my whole job. It's what if. But yeah, so the all hazards approach. Family emergencies, business emergencies, everything. An emergency affects not just the family structure, but it affects the economy, it affects everything. So all these different stakeholders need to have their own plans in place to help respond and recover quickly. So, okay, so how many of you have an emergency plan? One? Anyone else? How many people have identified the quickest way out of their house or their apartment if there's a fire? Anyone?
I imagine everybody figures they know how to get out of their house.
Right. Everyone figures that until it's needed. This is the whole thing that we try to drive home right here, right? Is that there is a basic human thought that nothing bad can happen to me. It won't happen to me because it can't happen to me. And then it does. And it's like, what do I do now? I try to do this, but this route is compromised, right? Think about it simple as a fire. Has anyone been in this facility when there was like a fire drill or a fire alarm? No? Yeah? Do you guys just walk out into the parking lot right there? Perfect. That's part 1 of the emergency plan. That is exercising your plan right there. How many people here work in, a building somewhere and they do fire drills or have in the past? A couple people, right? Great. How many people know of other individuals that you worked with in the past who just sat at their desk because they're like, it's just a fire drill, I don't care? And I work in emergency management. Like, that's not a good thing, right? So I'll tell you a fun story. How many people here were here during the earthquake? The one that actually happened, not the one in Delaware, but the one that was in Mineral, Virginia. Yeah. Right? So our federal counterparts, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the ones who have created all this doctrine about what to do during these events, right, didn't know what to do. They ran outside during an earthquake while the buildings are shaking in DC to the middle of an intersection. So we're talking 15-story buildings that are shaking if just one were to fall. That is a bad, bad situation right there. So we try to come out here to tell you guys how to do things and what to do things. And I bring up earthquakes in particular because today we actually had an exercise throughout the entire Mid-Atlantic region where it was earthquake preparedness. So does anyone here know what to do during an earthquake? Just real quick. Yep, perfect. You want something sturdy? You want to get underneath it? Not the door frame. Okay, so this is a misconception, right? And I don't know who created it back in San Francisco after the San Francisco earthquake of 1988 or 89, but if a building's shaking, right, the door frame is shaking with it. If the door frame collapses, everything that's holding that door frame up comes straight down. Not a good day. That's all I'm going to say right there. So if you guys are in an earthquake, you get underneath a table, with one hand cover your head and your neck, the other hand hold on to that table, like a leg of the table, and I mean, that's all you can do. Maximize your chances, all right? Don't make yourself even more vulnerable than you already are. That's the best thing that you can do in that sort of situation right there. But I digress. Back to this, all right? So who here uses a cell phone? Come on, who really uses a cell phone? Who has a smartphone? Smartphones, okay? Who here remembers the numbers of the people that you would need to call on your smartphone? No one? All right, so great, you have it on the tablet. What if you don't have power? Are you going to write down those phone numbers?
Well, I have a list printed out in my kit.
Perfect. Well, you have a kid, so now you're even farther ahead than some people are, all right? But I bring this up in particular, right, because we as a society rely on these too much, all right? If for whatever reason the power goes out or the cell networks go down, are you going to be confident enough to know the numbers of family outside of this area that you can call to tell that you're okay? Are you going to be confident enough to know where to meet up, like with your children if they're at school and you can't get in contact with them?
School has parents of their students.
So they do. You're not wrong. But how many people do you think actually do that?
It's already made up and you don't have to.
So yeah, so schools have their own emergency plans built in. They try to educate the parents of the students about those plans. But these are the things that you as individuals kind of need to start putting together. Is if I'm here and my daughter or my son are here and we can't get in contact with one another, do we have a location that we've agreed upon to meet?
Or somebody to call.
Or someone to call. So, your communications plan, right? That's basically it. You have your family's phone numbers written down somewhere, an in-town contact, so someone in Fairfax County, Arlington, someone local. Do you know people who live outside of the county or outside of the area to contact if you need to leave Fairfax or whatever it may be? Financial preparedness. So, I'm going to do this real quick. So, I have some stuff that I'm going to give away for you guys to help you kind of build some of this, okay? You're very welcome. And I'm going to just kind of walk through it real quick. So one of these, the most important thing in this kit right here, if you will, is the bag itself, all right? So the bag, I'll bring some more back in just a second. The bag helps you track some of the stuff that you need to be financially prepared, okay? So your critical documents, so your identifications, okay? Your household information, your financial information, legal, medical, children's information. Make copies of all this stuff. and throw it into these bags, right? The example I always give, okay, is the wildfires in California, okay? If the sheriff or the fire marshal comes knocking on your door at 2 in the morning and says you have to leave your house, there is no time to turn around and go back and grab some stuff. This bag right here, you put it in your car, at your front door, at a friend's house. That way, if anything happens, you have it all put together, basically.
And you did that.
What's that?
I attached an envelope like that to the top of the disaster kit, and it has a schedule for checking it.
There you go. Well, you're jumping ahead right now, man. So like I said, you have this bag. This is something that you should absolutely use if you haven't already, all right? It's a great thing to kind of put together, and it's a checklist. You literally just go down and check things off as you go. One thing that isn't necessarily on there that I try to tell people to put in there are photographs, all right? The things that you think are priceless and irreplaceable. Put a couple of those in there just in case something does happen, okay? All right, I already talked about the out-of-town contact, remaining in place or sheltering in place. So our current society, if you will, especially in the United States, we hear about active violence incidents all the time, okay? Especially with religious facilities, it is becoming an even bigger issue. So we talk about remain in place, right? This can be used for any sort of incident, right? A tornado, you have to shelter in place with a place with no windows, okay? The shelter in place locations in this facility in particular should also be identified. If the worst does happen, everyone in this congregation should know the exact way to get there and what to do, okay? So to be prepared and plan ahead of time, you need to know these things. Where is the shelter in place location? I mean, it could be a tornado, right? Tornado warning comes on your phone. You need to go and get covered because tornadoes are unforgiving, okay? And I live probably about 10 minutes away from here. And 2 or 3 months ago, 5:45 in the morning, I wake up to a tornado warning in my area. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me right now. And there was an actual tornado over at Thomas Jefferson High School. So that was only about 2 minutes away from me. So to think that it can't happen is just setting yourself up for failure, okay? Assume that it will happen and prepare for it, okay? So sheltering in place, like I said, if you don't know the locations, where you go, where you have fun, where you live, identify those. Talk to your family about where to go and what to do, okay? Evacuation, all right? So how many people had issues with traffic on the way here? I did, because I-66 is awful, and when someone has a fender bender, 3 lanes close. It's terrible. But try to imagine if something is this grandiose where we have to evacuate Fairfax County in particular. So there's 1.1 million people that live in Fairfax County. Within the National Capital Region, there's close to 4.5 million. And out of those 4.5 million, there's probably an equal number of vehicles and then some. How many people here would want to leave their car? I know I wouldn't, all right? But in an evacuation, they're going to tell you, you got to leave. These are the routes. You're going to be sitting in traffic for a long time. So in most cases, especially in our area, sheltering in place is probably your more prominent solution to these issues. Evacuation is going to be messy. And that's me telling you as someone who's currently doing evacuation planning with the entire region. It's a messy thing. But you have to know if we tell you to evacuate, there's good reason. Especially for the people down in Florida and the Panhandle, they received evacuation orders. Some people, for a multitude of reasons, socioeconomic status, health status, so on and so forth, couldn't leave, right? And we understand that. But when we say you should leave, there's good reason behind it. So just know that if the government is telling you to leave, there's a good reason why they're saying so. So I already talked about it. Do you know the facility's emergency protocols? If you haven't been here during a fire drill, try and get the people here to schedule a fire drill so that you know what to do. If you haven't had the police department come here to talk to you about worship watch and to identify the shelter-in-place locations, try and get that done as well, because they'll tell you what to do as far as run, hide, fight is concerned, okay? All right, so a kit, an emergency kit. I know you said you already have an emergency kit, but what are the things that we absolutely need to survive? Does anyone know? Yes. Okay, flashlight's something. Okay, some food. Blanket. What else? Water. Okay, what else? Medicines. All these things, that's just 5 things right there. And you can go on and on and on to say, I need this, I need this. I'll tell you the 5 things you absolutely need to survive though. Food, water, shelter, clothing, first aid medicine stuff, okay? Those are the 5 absolute essentials that you need, okay? You can survive without a flashlight. It's not gonna be comfortable at night, but you can survive without it, okay? Your emergency kits are supposed to be built so that you can last 3 days, okay? Look at Mexico Beach, for example, down in Florida. They are still having issues with utility personnel and public safety personnel being able to get to people. And that happened over a week ago. So we're talking 7 days now that people don't have the resources that they need. We try to tell people to build these things to understand that the government is doing what they can, but there is a lot of stuff that we're doing behind the scenes. Logistically speaking, talk about moving a can of peas, all right? A can of peas to Puerto Rico. That one can of peas costs 19 cents. By the time it is delivered, that can of peas costs $187. Why? Because you have to load the peas. You have to put the peas on a truck. That truck has to go to the airport. The airport has to load the peas. The peas gets on the airplane. The airplane flies to the destination. It lands, it gets unloaded, loaded back onto a truck, taken to a delivery site. And by the time it's done that, you have like about 35 steps in between from the manufacturing and bottling of that one can of peas to the actual delivery of it. And the management. I mean, there are so many different things that go into this. But think about all those steps right there. That takes time, all right? So the resources that you need are being worked on, but it takes time. There's a lot of things that go into moving a can of peas, all right? So like I said, for 3 days, that's kind of what you should be shooting for as a minimum. If you can get up to 7 days, great. But again, just starting by even putting a case of water, you've already started your emergency kit, okay? A couple tips for those who haven't and are planning to do so. Every 6 months, check the stuff in your emergency kit. For those of you who have kids, especially young kids, I mean, they grow up, right? You don't want to have clothing in there for a 1-year-old and then they're 2 and they can't fit into their clothing anymore. It's going to be an awful, awful thing right there. Also with kids and adults, make sure you have stuff to entertain yourself. You will go stir crazy if you have no electricity and no means of entertainment, okay? Stuff as simple as books, board games, Sudoku puzzles, one of my favorite things to do. Disaster planning stuff, whatever you want. All that stuff should be included as well, okay? And then think about you all in particular. How many of you in here take medication? Anyone? A couple people? Do you understand that your medication only is for a certain duration, right? If you run out of that medication, what does that do? It's not a good thing, right? You can actually build in 4 days of your medication, put it away, and then refill your prescription with no harm, no foul to you. So you have your medication on standby, And then once you get your next, you literally take the stuff in that med bottle and switch it out. So you always have good medicine for you.
So you're using your stock.
Exactly. Okay? All right. So staying informed. So a couple of the things that I put into your bags here. One of them is Fairfax alerts. How many people in here are Fairfax County residents? Most people? How many people are Arlington County residents? Couple? So good news.
But I work in Arlington.
You work in Arlington? Great. So Fairfax and Arlington use essentially the same system, okay? And we manage that system. Our alert system, Fairfax alerts in particular, or Arlington alerts, is a public information and warning system, okay? So how many of you a couple of weeks ago got those alerts on your phone that said presidential alert? Most people, right? So that's a different system right there, which we also can do. But Fairfax alerts is free, can email you, can text you, it can call you if you really want, about different things like government closures, road closures, different government agency stuff that's going on, disaster information, so on and so forth, okay? So if you haven't signed up for Fairfax County alerts and you want to, the website's right there. I also gave you all a postcard in your little kit thing to show you how to do it and what the capacity of this system is. For those of you who are on social media, you can follow us at Ready Fairfax. All right, I'm not a social media guru. I don't ever plan to be a social media guru. I think there's too many things that are wrong. But don't get me on my soapbox about social media. Anyways, we do have our own social media, okay? We also, not so much anymore, but we used to do a lot of Facebook Live stuff where we would talk about certain incidents or certain things going on in that month. Our website, if I'm not talking well enough to you all and you want to learn on your own, by all means, go to our website, which is fairfaxcounty.gov/emergency management. And then our blog, if you want, there's the thing. So one of the other things that you can add to your kit that I didn't necessarily talk about earlier. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question because I have
Yeah, so her question was, she has a friend in North Carolina who works in emergency management, and are you talking about being deployed somewhere?
No, it's like they do training.
So, and good point. So there are different volunteer organizations that we have in the county, one of them being the CERT teams, community emergency response teams. We have the Medical Reserve Corps. We have my volunteer program, which is the OEM Volunteer Corps. And we have a bunch of other volunteer opportunities. Some of the stuff you're talking about is what like the American Red Cross does, where volunteers are actually picked and deployed to disaster zones. They also have local stuff. For a couple of the colleagues that I work with directly, they're actually down in Florida right now, and who knows how long they'll be there for, because again, that incident in particular is going to be a long-term recovery initiative. But we also do offer our employees in emergency management to be part of incident management teams that become a resource for the entire country. So we've had personnel from my office go to Hawaii. We've had personnel from my office go to California, Florida, Texas, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands. So if something bad happens, we become a resource for the rest of the country to use, okay?
Red Cross has the disaster action teams.
Yes.
And that's all local operations.
And so American Red Cross has their own thing. Team Rubicon has another one of the disaster related, what's that?
Amateur radio emergency services.
Yeah. Yep, we have all that stuff here. So, all right. So her question was, what happens if a parent is at work while their kids are at school and say like a severe storm comes through or whatever weather incident or maybe even a man-made incident occurs? The schools take priority, okay? The schools, and especially Fairfax County Public Schools, have their own emergency action planning. So for example, and don't necessarily want to use as an example, but an active shooter in the area, they go into lockdown. So every single kid is basically locked into their classroom, and they are not allowed to leave until local law enforcement says the scene is safe to do so. I would put a lot of praise into the public school system because they have it pretty much locked down if things do happen. As far as picking up your kid, depending on the situation, if it's a lockdown, they won't let anyone into the area. So if it's a severe weather incident, they might be a little bit more prone to letting the parent come and pick them up and take them, but it also depends. I mean, if it's a tornado warning, they're not gonna let anyone, and I would expect and hope that you wouldn't put yourself in that situation where you become more vulnerable. But, it's kind of each situation, it depends on the situation, so.
That's why you should know what the
Exactly.
plan is and how to communicate.
Same thing with this facility. That's why you should know what this facility does at different types of disasters and emergencies as well, okay? So this is a fun little thing right here, okay? And forgive me because I kind of have to look at it a little bit. So if you look on the inside circle, those are your 5 basic unmet needs that you always need. So you need water, food, medicine, air, oxygen, and healthcare, okay? Afterwards, you need medical equipment, home health care, personal residence, healthcare, assisted living, retirement communities, caregiver support, yada, yada, yada. And then everything afterwards is your long-term, okay? So it's the immediate, short-term, long-term needs that everyone needs, especially in this demographic. Seniors, people with access and functional needs, individuals with disabilities. These are the kind of things that you need to think of ahead of time. Because if something does happen, that first circle right there are things you're gonna need immediately. Second circle, within a couple weeks. Third, month, 2 months, way down the road. So, all right, so I talked about earlier that we would talk what would happen during a sunny day. So these are all the things that you have during a sunny day, right? All these services are good. You have your food, your water, you have your medical support services, transport services, so on and so forth, right? So everything is good, everything's moving along, no problem. Until it's not sunny, okay? So if you look, your faith-based support and businesses, your utilities, your family support, your medical equipment, all this other stuff becomes very, very rare, okay? Or not available at all. So food and water, medications, you have a reduced amount of it, so you have to make it last. Okay? This is why emergency planning and emergency kits are so important ahead of time, because of what happens in a disaster area or in an emergency. All the things that you use on a day-to-day basis become stretched or not available at all. Okay? All right, actionable steps. So I'm here right now. I love coming to these things because, again, they are a lot more personable. I like talking to people. I don't like necessarily going out to events because people are just all about the giveaways. But as an organization, as family, as individuals, start making your kits. Start making your plans. Get informed or stay informed, so Fairfax alerts, social media, and get involved if you want. I mean, volunteering is a big thing. Press the issue of emergency preparedness and preparation for bad things, okay? If you guys don't have them, the fire department has these things called a file of life, okay, which you can put on your refrigerator. It basically talks about all the people that live in the apartment or in the house, their medications and their medical history. So if something happens, they can pull that off the wall and they already know who and what is there, okay? Exactly, all your medications, your medical needs, your...
I added the insurance contacts.
Perfect. So yeah, you can add whatever you want as long as they know to pull that off the wall, then you're good to go, Okay? And then develop your long-term preparedness goals. So I gave you these bags, right, to develop your financial preparedness stuff. Do your kits, and then develop your communication plans. That takes some time because you need to know and identify people outside of your area that you're going to contact. You need to know your doctor's information. If you have pets, your vet's information, your insurance information, so on and so forth, all the way down the list. And I know all this is incredibly daunting, right? Start small. Work on one thing. Start with a bag. Start with one thing. You're already making steps to prepare yourself a little bit more, okay? Don't by all means think that if you don't have all this stuff done ahead of time, that you're already compromised, okay? One step at a time, very small. And always think what to do if this happens. What would you do if this happens? If you have young children, fire drills at the house and make it into a game, okay? We're gonna go hide at the tree. Any questions? Questions, no questions? All right, well, I'm gonna stand up here, and if you have questions, by all means, you can ask me personally. But that's it. So I hope this was really informative. If no one didn't get one of the bags, there's extra ones up here. But yeah, thank you for having me. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to come and ask, okay? Thank you. You're welcome.